What's up, boys? It's episode 3 with Shane here. We also got Christian and we have a special guest here. His name's Brandon. I've known him since high school. We're close friends. We're here to talk about the Mamba Mentality book. We've read about a quarter of the book now. This is our first episode of the month with it. And there's a lot of good stuff to be talking about Kobe. I mean, definitely with his death and his daughter's death, it definitely struck the nation. And it was super hard to a lot of people, and we wanted to figure out why did it impact so many people. And at the end of the day, reading his book now, I can tell that mentality that he has and what he has brought to the table for the families and people to see around the world is just awesome, and it's incredible to see this. So we're going to be talking about that today. First, though, Christian is going to be introducing our new Brewski of the week with another WeldWorks product. Go ahead, Christian.
Yeah, so we got another WeldWorks this week. It is a coffee coconut stout. Very coffee, very coconutty. But in terms of its actual background, it features loads of toasted oak coconut. It's roasted Peruvian coffee from Zoe's Cafe in Greeley. For those of you who didn't know, WeldWorks is in Greeley off 8th Ave. But yeah, so it's sweet creaminess, toasted coconut, offers perfect complement to the contributed character of the coffee, and it's just a bunch of different roasts in there. It's pretty smooth. I mean, I don't know what you guys think.
It's good.
It's pretty good. I mean, it definitely tastes like coffee. For those of you guys that are actually into coffee, I myself am not a huge fan, but this actually tastes pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, anything from you, bud?
I like your creamy comment. It's fairly creamy, smooth, goes right down. I'm not a big beer drinker. I drink mostly light beer, but this is a pretty good stout, and you can definitely taste the coffee. It kind of mixes in with the beer, and for me, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Well, anyways, going into your life a little bit, Brandon, why don't you tell kind of a little backstory to the people out here listening of where you came from, kind of where you grew up. We just want to hear a little bit about your life, and we'll kind of get into the book. And I know you're a big Kobe fan, and you grew up watching Kobe and have had a lot of good kind of memories of watching Kobe and a big follower of him. So I just kind of want to hear your backstory first, and then we'll kind of jump into the book with it.
Perfect. You sent me a nice questionnaire of questions to prepare for this podcast about 25 minutes before. So this is the one that I got through the most. I'm from Metairie, Louisiana, and lived there for a few years, but then I moved to Hermosa Beach, California. Grew up on the beach. Was very blessed to have that experience. And for most of my formative years watching sports in LA, there's no football. So big Saints fan, so I used to watch them on TV. And the big thing in LA is the Lakers. The Dodgers are cool, but the Lakers own the city. And if you know anybody from down there, they love the Lakers. You've probably heard a lot of gifs and memes about we love the Lakers, stuff like that. But Kobe is kind of like how Drew Brees is to New Orleans. Drew came in at a time down there, and he helped restore a city and build an identity for the city. And Kobe came into Laker Nation with Shaq, kind of as the face of that post-Magic Johnson era. He spent a lot of time developing his own kind of reputation and place in the league and in Laker history. And he did it through his Mamba Mentality, which we're going to be talking about today. He worked a lot harder than most of his predecessors. I know Magic Johnson was someone who was more about fun, happiness, smiling, and Kobe always had a frown or he was upset. And for a long time, I felt like that was a misconception of him and a misrepresentation of him as a person, because he was definitely someone who enjoyed a lot of stuff, but he took it seriously for basketball. And that's that kind of Mamba mentality, being very focused, driven, dedicated. I listened to some quotes before this from Kobe. I also watched the Lakers game, the first home game after his death, and they had a little quote of him talking about the Mamba mentality. He talked about the box. He said, look, my box was basketball, and I did everything I could to maximize that box. And we all have different boxes and have to find out what that box is. For some people, it may be art, it may be science, it may be whatever, but understand that you have something that you're the best at or you're really good at, you can excel in, and take the time to develop those skills. Be who you are and embrace yourself, and that's kind of what the Mamba mentality was about. I think there's a big misconception that it's kind of being arrogant or rash, and I don't think that that is necessarily what it was meant to be, but Kobe was kind of panned that way for a while. So it's just about finding out who you are, maximizing it, and then also applying that, like Kobe said, in that same kind of snippet on the Jumbotron there. Also maximize that for your family. A lot of people don't realize how much athletes sacrifice. I know, Shane, you with college football, you sacrificed a lot of time doing preparation, stuff like that, and maybe you can talk about that and balancing that with friends, family, and social life. So it's about having a mentality of prioritizing things and giving yourself to all of it at once and kind of having no regrets.
Yeah, no, that was super good. And I think the biggest thing, even taking away from this, kind of taking that mentality into your life, it doesn't just have to be sports, but taking it a step farther, like how do you go through life with this mentality? How do you go through the next steps? How do you take each step of your life and say, hey, I got to have this strong mentality to keep moving forward? One of the things that you growing around Kobe and watching him a lot and learning a lot from him, what were kind of some of the big influences, or how has he impacted you in more of a real life situation way, but also in sports, like in high school also, but just kind of in general, how has he impacted you?
I'll use a fun reference to Joe Gates. I'm not sure if he's been on here yet, but he'll be on here eventually, I'm sure. Whenever we play basketball with Joe, generally somehow you and Ryan get on the same team, which I still think is unfair because Ryan and I are very similar skill level, and then you kind of athletically kind of overpower Joe a little bit. So it's kind of in that situation, for me, doing what you have to do to win and being able to work with your teammates, get the best out of them, but get the best out of yourself. So in those situations, for me, I understand that I have to take on a different role than kind of like if I had Ryan on my team or if I had you on my team. And kind of, you got to do the little things, and it's not just about scoring points. A lot of things, especially football, it's like about scoring touchdowns. Basketball, it's about scoring buckets per se. Baseball, it's about hitting dingers, home runs. But it's not about that. The kind of Mamba mentality and what you learn from Kobe is putting in the work to do the little things. Kobe was also all NBA defense, which people don't talk about.
You saying that, let me jump in real quick. You saying the personnel you have to master. So one thing in the book that we were talking about, Phil Jackson actually said this. He said leadership is a tough thing to master with certain personnel. And he said, how do you master that in your life? And how do you master that basically in your job? He said that Kobe took, once after that like kind of Shaq era, he had a different personnel on his team. So he said to build a personnel around, or to build a leadership around a personnel that's not necessarily the best personnel that you can have, how do you go about that? And that's kind of how he brought into like the Mamba mentality of building that strong leadership with maybe the lack of talent.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of that too is holding people accountable. And I'm not gonna lie, when I play sports, I get a little competitive sometimes, and I hold people accountable. And in the heat of the moment, yeah, you may come off like you're being a jerk or something like that. But I know that if I'm gonna give you everything I have, and I know, like I said, with you guys playing sports, you understand this too. When you give everything you can to your team, when you give everything you can to a sport, and even like your job, when you give everything you can to your job, and then there are people that don't pull their weight, you can be a leader and you can hold them accountable, or you could be someone that goes in the situation and you coddle them and you allow that behavior. But if you allow that behavior, you don't make everyone else better. You don't do your company justice. You don't do your team justice. You don't do your coach justice, because you're not giving your all and holding others accountable to the same standard of pushing yourselves to achieve the overall goal of the team, which is in business to grow revenue, or if it's a nonprofit to have impact, if it's sports to win championships. And I think a lot of people get caught up on numbers, and a lot of people, if say they aren't starting or they aren't doing something like that, they think they can't impact the game and the team, and that's not true. I think some of the best people that we know, and some of the most impactful things that have happened for me, at least in sports, are seeing the guys who aren't the starters, who aren't the main guys, the guys that get the rebounds, the guys that get the assists, the guys that come in like the fullback who blocks the whole game and gets no stats. That guy's beat to hell after the game. Yeah. But that guy helps the running back get 250 yards rushing. Those guys are the warriors that truly epitomize the Mamba mentality of going in there, doing the hard work, being dedicated and sacrificing yourself for the team and making the overall product better. And I think that's kind of what it is, having an accountability and working together as a cohesive unit to reach your goals.
I think that really goes into the whole mentality to win, though, right? I mean, in anything you put your hands on, you have to be able to go into it and know that you don't really have an option. Like, your goal is to win, you're gonna have to go through everything to do that. So I mean, if you look at guys in the NFL or any football, like you were saying, the line really doesn't get any stats, yet they're the ones putting in work every damn play, right? They're the ones blocking, they're the ones cutting, they're the ones taking most of the brunt forces that are going on at the line of scrimmage. Basketball, it's your sixth man off the bench. Baseball, it's that, designated hitter that, he may not play a ton, he may not play out in the field, he's just there to hit. Whatever it really is, you have to have a win mentality. And if, that goes into work, like your work, that goes into family stuff. You have to be able to go out there and really understand that you can't lose. And that's something I think Kobe kind of displayed in a lot of aspects, especially after Shaq had left, and really was like, okay, well, we may not have the best talent around, but I'm going to be a leader and I'm going to show you guys how to win. And that's kind of leading by example at that point.
Yeah, and that was in the book. So even Phil Jackson, another piece that Phil Jackson talked about was, he said Kobe achieved these goals by two things: dedication, perseverance. Mm-hmm. And if you look at like those two things, to you guys, we know that like dedication in and out of like the phases of life, like how much are you dedicated to the game was super important. But I look at the piece of like the perseverance. And if you guys look at perseverance, I don't know how many times you guys could put your own definition into what perseverance means to you, but the struggles that you go through, whether that's in sports, whether that's in life, it's how do you not crumble and how do you take that next step, And even like take that out of life and like in high school or college or life now, building that around your family is, I think, for so long for me, like so many times we have in life where like one day could be absolutely great and the next day could be actually absolutely horrible. And it could be whether like that's a death, whether that's you lose a game, whether that's whatever happens. That perseverance piece of that Mamba mentality has been huge and a big influence to my life. And I don't know how you guys see that more and some things that you persevered through, but kind of examples that you have of perseverance and dedication.
Do you want sports? Do you want our life? What gets
like it could be either like your life or sports in general.
I think when you look at just sports, you think of how basically every team defines their success as kind of Super Bowl. Some teams in your rebuilding, you say, hey, we want a few extra games. That's great, but the main goal is Super Bowl. In football and basically a championship in any sport is kind of how you determine your success. So depending on the sport, there's roughly 31 teams or so, that 29 in NBA that don't achieve their goal. So every single season they're persevering for that. But there's also, in terms of the team goal, there's also personal goals. Some people set out goals to do certain things in a season. They don't get it. Some people set up, hey, I want to start next year or this or that. And I think I'm a Saints fan as well, so there's been a lot of perseverance there for that team. Having lost in the playoffs in difficult ways the last 3 years. But the reason why they're able to persevere is they have a great leader. And I think in terms of perseverance, to truly be able to persevere through different events, whether it's something in your life or it's sports or whatever, you need to have a great leader. Either you need to be that leader or you need to have someone that you can look to. And I think for the Saints, it's Drew Brees. In my life, it was definitely, I've been very blessed to have a lot of great leaders in my professional career, my sports career, stuff like that. For the Lakers, it was always Kobe. And then before Kobe, it was Magic and so on and so forth. So I think for perseverance, you either have to be able to have someone around you, which is a little bit of a reliant thing. And I don't recommend doing that, where you rely on someone else who's a great leader, or you need to say, hey, look, I need to step up and be a leader for others and say that I want to be the person that when things go wrong, that when we're challenged, that people look to you, whether that's in your, whatever you're passionate about. Like I said, the box, there's so many different things. It could be, I want to talk about stuff that's like different. So like I've been getting into, not me personally, but like some of my friends have been getting into art and stuff, and I'm learning a lot about that by trying to experience that with them. I look at a painting and I just see paint, but I'm not gonna lie, but
I feel like most people do.
Yeah, but some of these guys, they see all these different things, and for that, when you're doing art, I feel like you have a lot of stuff to persevere through, because that's an industry where people either don't value you or people don't value your work, and you may work so hard in it and think this is amazing, and someone may say, hey, this is nothing, or then someone could think, oh my gosh, it's $1 million piece. So for perseverance there, you have to have that Mamba mentality and be able to say, hey, look, I have value regardless of the monetary number that people put on me. That my form of, and that's what my friend Ryan Vance is doing. He also has a podcast, but I'm not going to shout him out right now because I'm making him give you guys some money or something. But he's doing a million different kinds of art, music, different things like that. And he said something really powerful to me, and we were having a conversation a few weeks ago, which shows that Mamba mentality and that perseverance. That he said, I don't want other things to define me. I want to define and empower myself. He's quit drinking and doing everything else, and he's like, I need to find value in myself. I can't run away from things that have been holding me back, and I can't hide from them through alcohol or different stuff like that. I need to embrace who I am, persevere through all the difficulties of my life. And he said, every day I'm finding new things that I love and enjoy. So I think that's kind of the Mamba mentality too. Understand that, yes, you may have that box that I mentioned at the beginning, and you may thrive in that box. Kobe's box was basketball. But then when Kobe retired, he did film and different stuff like that, and he interacted with so many people outside the sports world. And I think all of us have so much more to give. Sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves. For me, the longest time was when I grew up, I was always this great athlete across multiple sports, and I played all these different sports, and I always thought, I'm only going to be this athlete. And what do other people, and I just basically defined myself as that. And you have to understand that you're something else too. So for me, I find that same competitive drive and everything through business. So right now, when I work and stuff, I push myself to outwork competitive businesses, the people that we compete with. I challenge myself to outwork other people within my company. And it's understand that we, yes, have these different boxes or these different talents that we can excel in, but there's also something else that we can offer the world. And I know, Shane, like right now, you're doing a podcast, man. Who would have thought you'd be doing a podcast? You always liked helping others, but you were always a great athlete. And I mean, that's how we always defined ourselves growing up, so.
Yeah, and even you kind of going through some of the stuff that you were talking about with like the Mamba mentality, you brought in kind of other aspects that were in the book that I was reading. He goes through the process, like one of the chapters is like the process, and he talks about the biggest thing I took from this is the internal drive versus the external drive. Mm-hmm. And he said his drive was all internal. Like he didn't nothing else was trying to motivate him outside of himself. It was him self-motivating. Right, he was self-motivated, and I think that's super important that we start to pull that into our own lives. That a lot of people try to look for motivation. I saw this quote. He kind of talked about motivation, how you can lose motivation in one day and then not have it the next day, and that's right. But if you have like an end goal in your mind, now you can keep that motivation throughout day in and day out. And I took from that internal drive. I think I bring that to myself, that you have to have something bigger from yourself, that you're motivating yourself at a bigger goal and going for something more. It can't be your mom or your dad or your friends trying to always motivate you. You got to be able to motivate yourself. You're the one who has to do the work, and you're the one who has to wake up, go to work. You're the one who has to go through the relationship. You're the one who has to, put the work in and put the time in. People can only help you and try to motivate you in a way, but if you don't know your goal, if you don't know your passion, you're never going to find that, right? And I think that was huge that I took from that chapter, like the process of it, is he talked about it was all that internal drive. He knew he had that internal clock in him, that he had to do everything on his own, and he couldn't get it from like anybody else.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, they struggle with being outcome oriented or process oriented. I think obviously there's a process that goes into everything, but if you're so focused on what I'm doing right now, that's going to, whatever it may be, I think you have to be an outcome focused person to continually have motivation every day. Otherwise you lose it, because if you're not focused on what your end goal is, whether it be lifting 10 more pounds next week than you did last week, whether it be starting your own company, whether it be this podcast, for example, like everybody has to have their outcome oriented mindset to get to their goal. The process is what comes along with that. How are you going to get there? I don't think, for a lot of people, I don't think it matters how you get there. It's just like, you're going to fucking put in the work to do it. And if one way is not working, you're going to switch it up. But at the end, your goal is still going to be the same. Exactly. Right? So, I mean, for Kobe, for Peyton Manning, for like Drew Brees, all the top people, right? Their goal is a championship. Yep. Whatever work they have to put in between, end of season when they didn't get the championship the next year is that process, but their goal still is the same. You have to win a championship. And that was in the book, so he actually saying that, he had a quote in there that I wrote down. It says, embrace what works even if it's unpopular. So basically like your own process. Just because your process is different than other people's process, then that is important, right? And you can have your own process, but it doesn't matter if your process is different than, or my process is different than your process, and your process is different than Brandon's. And that's a big part of it, is that if you embrace what works for you, even if it doesn't work for other people, you got to take that into consideration, take that into your heart and say,
hey, just because this is an unpopular act, but it works for me, I'm going to do it for me, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how I take it like huge from that.
I think with that too, it's unpopular sometimes to call people out and push people. The way that society is now, I feel like there's a lot of, everybody's trying to be happy and trying to be butterflies and roses, and people are afraid sometimes.
Soft.
Well, a little bit of that too, but I think everybody's very much afraid to say something and offend someone because we're very much a social media and internet driven society now. So the in-person stuff, like, yeah, you can be cordial in person, but then you could be trashing someone online, and it's made a lot of kind of fakeness. But I think that if you truly have people in your life, and I think you can speak on this, Shane, too, where, I mean, like you, me, and Ryan Mahoney can sit here, a different Ryan than the other one. I love this Ryan too, though. I think we can pretty much tell each other anything. I think Ryan says the meanest stuff in the whole world that he says to anybody to me. So I think it's good that we can all talk to each other and hold each other accountable and be like, hey, look, if something's going on in your life and we disagree with it, we can disagree, and there's going to be no anger, there's going to be no resentment. We may get upset for a few minutes and argue, but I think that's kind of what is defined Kobe, is that he was not afraid to have that tough conversation with teammates. He would yell at people and say, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. And yeah, a lot of people's egos got hurt because most of the guys in the NBA, you always hear you're the best player on your team every single, basically, year, your whole life until you get to the NBA, and then maybe you're a rotational player. But it was difficult for people to hear that harsh criticism. But at the same time, I think if you go back and you ask all those people who he was hard on, hey, did this help you? I guarantee you all of them would say what he did for us allowed us to win a championship and allowed me to either excel further in my career, make more money, something like that. And I mean, I get that a lot at work. I have a very difficult boss, and he grills me about everything, every little tiny thing. And if I do something good, he finds a way to give me criticism as well, which sometimes it hurts and it sucks. But he asked me, and he goes, hey, would you have it any other way? And I say no. In the back of my head, I think yes, but I do say no because for me, it allows me to push myself and get better. And I think when someone's hard on you, it genuinely means they believe in you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So.
No, I like that because even another kind of quote that I wrote down, it relates to that exactly, that he said Kobe led by example for his teammates, but they couldn't keep up with him. He actually challenged them by the example that he set. And it kind of sets like a hierarchy of, they literally thought they could not keep up with him, but he challenged them to get to his level, right? And that was a big part of like that leadership role. If you're just trying to do something and become the best at it, you're challenging other people to become the best at what they're trying to do also. And that's a huge piece, like whether that's in the work world, whether that's in your sports, you're trying to lead by example. And we always say that, lead by example, find that way to motivate other people. But if you don't set the bar high, then you're not going to put yourself into greatness.
I think you have to be willing to push yourself further and harder than anybody around you. And that's what Kobe did, and that's what a lot of those great athletes do, that you can say they really defined their career by what their work ethic was on or off the court, off the field, whatever it was. It's that mentality that you have to be in the gym before everybody else. You have to be the last one out of the facility at the end of the day. You have to be putting an extra 5 pounds of weight on the bar, or shooting an extra 100 shots at the end of practice, whatever it may be. But it all goes back to just being willing to push yourself to a point where you are like pretty much nowhere near anybody else.
Yeah, you're sacrificing a ton of time to develop your craft and to develop who you're trying to be. And that was my favorite quote that I pulled from the book, was I wasn't willing to sacrifice my game, but also wasn't willing to sacrifice my family time, so I decided to sacrifice my sleep. And that's what he said, and that like hit me strong, where it was like he wasn't willing to sacrifice the game, wasn't willing to sacrifice the family, but when it came to sleep, when it came to the other hours that he could put time in to work on himself, he sacrificed those hours. And that was big, and that's kind of how I sat there and took that into consideration, that we all have something in our life that's powerful. Like if you're not whether willing to sacrifice time with your relationship or family time or like work time because you're trying to be great, you got to find something else to sacrifice. You always have to find something else. But when you find that something else, make sure it's the right thing and make sure that you're willing to sacrifice that time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say that, because one of the quotes I had written down that I kind of picked up on was, when everybody else was thinking it was time for bed, Kobe's mind was telling him it's time to get ahead of the competition.
Yeah.
You know, and that goes back into pushing yourself harder and further than anybody else.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, I think right now where I'm at in my life, I'm kind of at this point right now where I'm in a fairly serious relationship, so that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
I am trying to make sure I balance maintaining my physical health, so going to the gym. I'm also trying to maintain relationships and do stuff with friends, which has been tough. I know, Shane, I say no to you probably more than anybody.
And you're here though, so I'm glad you're here.
And I mean, work, man. I work like crazy because I'm driven to be successful, and I've set lofty goals, and I've given those goals to my bosses and my boss's bosses, and I said, hey, push me as hard as you can because I want to do those goals and I want to achieve them before anybody else. And for me, the biggest thing is, and it's hard to manage that time, but time management, dude, it's to the point now where I'm at my life and people are like, how do you do it? Like my girlfriend's mom and dad, her dad is a machine. He works like nobody's business, and he even sometimes says, hey man, how are you doing all this stuff? And for me right now, I mean, sleep's probably somewhere between 4 to 6 hours a night, works somewhere between 10 to 12 hours a day, and then I'm coming home, and as soon as I get home, I'm cooking dinner with my girlfriend, I'm working out with my girlfriend, I'm maybe squeaking in a game of Madden with Ryan Mahoney, or I'm playing some Overwatch or something, and then it's run repeat. But at some point you do get exhausted. I mean, I don't know how he did it for 21 years. I'm struggling to do it for 20 months.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have to figure out what
your end goal though. You have an end goal in your head.
But it's not just that. It's also you have to figure out what motivates you. And I think that's the most powerful thing that I've done for my life. And I've figured out what motivates me. I have goals that motivate me in the moment. So there's things like right now that motivate me. Wanting to become better. That's a goal that's never going to go away. Wanting to outwork everybody else, wanting to define myself as someone who's strong and all these different things. Those are all here right now. And then there's end goal stuff, like different stuff with my father. Not getting into that too much in the podcast. We'll be here for 5 years, or 24 years. But stuff with the way that my father's relationship was with me and my family and stuff like that. I understand that I want to be a better father. I want to be a provider. I want to do these things. And saying I want to be a provider doesn't mean that whoever I marry can't work and stuff, because I by all means would love the extra income. But I want to be able to know that I can provide my children the same life and the same things that I was given. And also to have stability, stuff like that. And those things motivate me every day. And yeah, I can get to a point probably before I even have kids where I could do those things. But understand that I want to push myself further and push myself beyond, because I don't want to have regret. One of the biggest things is regret. And you don't know how regret affects you until you truly have a moment in your life where you experience regret. And for me, I didn't learn what regret felt like in my life until I was 23 years old. Kind of my whole last relationship thing, looking back on that, understanding different regrets that I had. And from that moment on, that is the single biggest fire inside of me, that I want to do everything I can and everything that I do. My relationships with others, my friendships, my relationships with girlfriends, stuff like that, maybe my wife, all these different things with my family, that I want to leave no stone unturned, and I'm going to sacrifice sleep, or maybe I sacrifice playing video games by myself, or I sacrifice doing something that really doesn't provide the value to my life when I look long term, or when I look back on it and say, wow, I really will miss doing that. So sacrificing those things and figuring out what really matters to you is something that I think we all have to do. Definitely what matters to me changes a little bit. It's not, from where I'm at right now, I don't think it's going to change very much the rest of my life. But as you're growing up, I mean, from middle school, high school, even college, it changes daily, weekly, monthly, what your goals are, what you want, what you think you want, stuff like that. So as you get older and you kind of figure out, hey, this is who I am, and you accept who you are, you can then decide what you want to focus on. And then it's all about persevering and dedicating yourself to those things that you're passionate about. And I know, like for you, Shane, it's always, you liked coaching, you liked helping others, and you did a lot with work, with personal training. I'm sure Christian, you're the same way. I can't speak for knowing you as long as I've known Shane, but the things that you give back to these young athletes, you're giving them your wisdom. You're giving them your wisdom of life. You're giving them your wisdom of weights, of what workouts and what different programs were successful for you. And you're helping others get to a point that maybe you couldn't have achieved. Or maybe if someone had helped you that way, you would have achieved better. And you're doing something where you're finding out what you're passionate about, you're motivating yourself through that, and you're also motivating others. And I really, really think that's something that's very admirable. I don't get to motivate others like that. I work with grown adults who are a little bit less impressionable. And I think you guys are doing a great job. I think that definitely goes to the Mamba mentality as well, of lifting others. I think that's one of the big left out things of the Mamba mentality, is that through lifting up yourself, you naturally elevate others.
Yeah.
So
I think you can even look back at when we were all younger athletes, right? And you see those dudes on your teams that were kind of those natural born leaders, and you kind of wanted to follow in those steps just because, like, with the power of association, you wanted to be around the dudes that you knew were going to go somewhere. And I think for all of us, I mean, even you see it with our athletes now that we work with, I mean, you see the guys that are going someplace or going to the next level or whatever, is they're kind of associating themselves with each other. They're the wanting to work out together, they want to do whatever it is. And I mean, obviously at certain different points, like with you being with your job versus ours, like we have the ability to impact them and kind of show that. Whereas you know, you can impact older people and make them change a little bit or something. I mean, I don't know.
Well, no, I think with kind of like my role, I'll kind of just explain how my kind of leadership is. So basically, I've been put in a position to lead my division now with kind of the way that my situation is for my role. I'm not necessarily becoming direct supervisor for a lot of people, but I'm being challenged to be put in this weird kind of leadership role. So where people in my same role look at me, someone who's technically their equal, and they want to follow me and listen to me and develop underneath me. And I think the biggest way to develop people that are either older than you, same age as you, or people that just generally think that they're better than you and perceive that they are either equal to or better than you, those people that kind of aren't naturally don't want to follow you, you have to build a relationship. Yeah. And it's through, so for me, it's like, hey, look, guys, this is how I do things. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm going to sit in front of you guys. I'm going to open up with you and basically be vulnerable. Vulnerability is huge, especially when you're working with adults, because a lot of them are so used to having bosses that just tell them what to do, just talk down and be like, hey, look, this is how I do X, Y, and Z. This is what I think is the best way to do it. And then you ask a question like, hey, what do you guys do? What do you guys think is better? How do you think you're better than me? How can I improve? And then you create a dialogue. And generally, when you're working with adults and stuff, that dialogue is what people take away from. That's not you talking down to them, not you putting a PowerPoint in front of them like a high school and going line by line, do this, this, and this. Because a lot of these people are already set in their ways. They have a predisposition for how to do stuff, how to do their job, and they're not going to completely rechange and retool what they do, but they will listen and take little tiny nuances from you or nuances from each other. So for me, it's about say, hey, look, let's do this, this, and this, and then tell them, hey, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to come in front of me or the rest of the people if we do a conference call and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And the way that you get them to open up like that is to actually open up yourself first. Yeah. So for me, it's like, hey, look, I struggle with this, this, and this because my market that I work in has these challenges, and it's really frustrating. And then you ask them, how do you help? And they'll give you feedback. And then what happens is because they give you feedback and they have that trust and that relationship, they eventually will be able to say, hey, look, I'm having an issue, Brandon, or I'm having an issue, all of you, on a conference call. And they'll have the confidence to talk about that because it's an environment, in an open environment of building each other up. And that's kind of the Mamba mentality as well. Like I said, where it's you have to find ways and be creative in how you build others up through yourself. And I can be there and I can be number one in every metric, which is kind of where I'm at right now. I can be number one in all these things. You know, that's just a piece of paper. These guys are going to look at that piece of paper and say, he's number one because he has the biggest market, or he's number one because this, and there's all these excuses. But as soon as you make yourself a human, you make yourself a man in front of them and you say, hey, look, I may be great at this, but I struggle with this. And you start to make yourself someone they can relate to. That's when you truly can lead others.
Yeah. And that's, well, I was going to say, we all know Gary Vee, and he talked about on his Instagram, I saw this video, and bosses of companies that they own their companies, they're asking, how do you make a good company culture? And what Gary Vee said is, how many people do you have in your company? And the guy said, I have 310 employees. He's like, you have to build a personal relationship with every one of those employees. Those 310 employees, what you were just saying, Brandon, like, you have to build a personal relationship, a vulnerable relationship. You have to get to know these people. That's how you build a good culture, and that's how you get people to follow you, and that's how you get a good leadership culture. And I think a lot of companies are losing that, is they get a ton of these people, these big companies, they get a ton of these people, and they stop being personable with these employees. and they just want to say, hey, here's the rules, here's the guidelines, everything like that, but they don't even know what's personally going on in their lives, and they lose that culture because they don't care about like these employees. They don't care about what their feelings are. They don't care about their day-to-day routine. And the only way to do that, the more people you have to be vulnerable, like Brandon was saying. You have to have that good culture, and you have to have that personal relationship with these employees. And that was something I was looking at that, and that's so true with companies now, whether that's a team, a sports team, or whether that's you're in a big company, whether you're in a small company. You have to be vulnerable, and you have to build these good personal relationships with each person.
I think it's very hard when leaders, whether you're an owner of a company, whether you're a leader of a team, and you step away and feel like you can let somebody else lead your team that wasn't there to build that culture, wasn't there when the culture was built. I think, when athletes get hurt, you can see teams go downhill. If you see coaches kind of disappear and they built a great culture, and say they are a college coach and they get hired to go to another school, then you see all of a sudden that team that they had such a great culture, and it falls apart because they have a new guy come in and try to put his culture upon what was already built, and things just fall apart. I mean, that goes really with anything. I mean, at home with your own family, there's a culture built there. With your friends, there's a culture built within you guys. With your work environment, whatever it may be, there's always that culture. And if it falls apart and you stop having personal relationships and vulnerable relationships with everybody, it goes to shit, and you're kind of shit out of luck at that point.
And I think with just talking about culture with family and friends and stuff too, it's really hard to change culture once you establish culture. So if you go into an atmosphere, say you go into something and you act a certain way. So say you go into work and you're arrogant at first and you do this, and this. Everybody's first perception of you is, hey, this guy's a little shit. You know what I mean?
First impressions are
and it's gonna be difficult to change. But then the true challenge is, okay, you know what? You acknowledge that you have these issues. How do you change? How do you show people that you've changed? How do you grow? And to do that, honestly, it takes a very big you have to look inside yourself, find out what's going on, find ways that you help yourself. Like, say you have an issue and you Google it, right? And you see all these different articles for how to fix this issue. Maybe none of those ways apply to you, but you have to figure out what works for you. Then when you figure out what works for you, then you can go ahead and you make tangible changes. And we always talk about actions speak louder than words. That was gonna be my joke when you introduced me to talk about stuff I was gonna say, but nobody can see my actions unless they're watching the YouTube. But I think you need to
describe your actions in the background.
Sitting with left hand on leg, breathing into mic, trying not to say anything stupid, says something stupid, sweating. So I think what you got to do is basically understand that what's the word? Basically, you need to have a cognitive self-awareness that hey, my actions there needs to be an accountability of your actions. And for the longest time, I was always someone who would joke around just like I just did and do different things, and I would say stuff, and then basically I'd create a perception of myself, and then when I'd say or do things that weren't within that perception, I'd be still categorized in that perception. So for me, trying to redefine myself as I've grown up now was difficult for a few years. And it was difficult because I had people around me who kept boxing me into this perception and then trying to argue with them and say that it's changed. And what I realized is I just need to stop talking about it and start doing it. And that's where I was at. And I think no matter what point in your life, whoever's listening to this podcast, if you're 50 years old, if you're whatever, or you're 12, just understand that you can control everything in your life. Not everything, but you can control a lot of stuff that you feel like you can't control. You can control your dedication, your hard work. So many times I've heard people say, oh, well, I can't get up early, or I hate the mornings, or this, that, and the other thing. You know what? I hate waking up in the morning. There's nothing worse than waking up and looking at my alarm at 5, sometimes at 4, sometimes at 6. Even if it's 8, I still hate it. I still hate my alarm. But understanding that there's something bigger, and there's a perception. Every single day you need to work and control the perception of yourself, because eventually perception becomes a reality. Understand that you need to get up and work hard every day at work. So people at work see you every day, because what happens is you may have a new employee or somebody that's special comes in one day and they see you not working, and they tell you, oh man, that guy doesn't work, or they say something about you. You can plead and cry and complain to them and say, I work so hard every day, but you know what? They came in that one day, they saw you not working, so that's what they think is true. So you need to work hard every day. If it's sports, same thing. Practice, man. Work hard and practice. I couldn't stress how much practice has defined different people's careers. You look at these NFL guys, they talk about, oh, I worked hard in practice, or I was a practice squad guy, or I was a special teams guy, or some dude that just draining threes in practice. So understand that every single chance you have to be in front of others and interact within something that you're passionate about, whether it's sports, work, different things like that, take those times and really maximize them. And that's kind of what Kobe did. It's better than almost anybody else that I've ever seen, where he maximized every minute of practice to the point that he would piss people off in practice because they don't want to work as hard as him. Mm-hmm. Be that guy or that girl. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
you got to raise the competitiveness of the people around you, right? You have to go in there, like if you're going into practice, for example, you got to set a tone from the minute you step on the court or step out of the locker room, whatever it is. I mean, you have to go into practice with the mentality that it's time to shit on everybody else, in the sense that I'm going to raise my game to a level that nobody can compete with me.
Not verbally.
Exactly. Don't verbally shit on people, but like raise your game to the point where you literally are out there dominating from the standpoint of up and down the court, up and down the field, running to water. I mean, that can be a competitive thing.
Well,
so
it's not even about, it's being competitive in sports, but it's also just being competitive about yourself in life in general. Like, you got to hold yourself to a higher standard. If you want to be somebody and you want to make a mark on this world, you got to hold yourself to a high standard. And one of the things in his Kobe was talking about in the process chapter, he said he kept the end result in mind and he had no fear. He had no fear in doing what he had to go do, right? He had no fear that, like, if I looked embarrassed, I was reading this in one of the paragraphs, he said, if I looked embarrassed on the court, if I missed this three, if I fell down, something like that, I didn't care. I knew I was trying to work my ass off to try to make that next step. And it was about having no fear because he knew he had to challenge yourself. Everyone's a beginner at some point, right? You're not an expert at everything until you start practicing it. And he knew that he was going to fail and fail and fail and fail, but at some point it was going to bring him to that high level. Mm-hmm. And I think that's super important that people don't understand, is they hit a brick wall and then they're like, this is hard, so I'm going to back down. Or they fall down and then they don't get back up. No, if you get knocked down like 10 times, you got to get back up 11. There's all those different things that you just got to keep getting back up and keep fighting to that next step. And that's in life in general, and that's in sports, and that's in anything. But I think that's the biggest thing that Kobe put that mindset was, you will have your failures, you will have your hurts and your heartaches and everything like that, but at least if you know you have your mind and your end goal in your mind, you'll take yourself to that next level, right?
Yeah, just keep moving forward, really.
Yeah.
On that same kind of note that you were going, I'm just going to speak to whoever's listening. I don't know how many people you have listening or who listens or demographically listens, but the main thing is understand that you can control how much you work. You can control how much time you put into whatever you do. I just challenge all of you that if there's something that you're thinking about or something that you want to do, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to do it next week, I'm going to do it tomorrow, I'm going to do it next month, I'm going to do it next year, just do it right now. Set your alarm right now for whatever the heck you need to do, getting up, whatever you have to do, set a reminder on your phone and go do it. Because what's going to happen is, if it's not worth it to you right now in this moment, hearing me talk, you may not even know who I am, this random dude talk, that it's never going to be worth it though. If you keep saying, I want to go lose 10 pounds and I'm going to do it next month, next week, I'm going to have this dinner, I'm going to do this, I guarantee you're not going to lose 10 pounds. Or if you do, you're going to put it right back on. I think it's understand that you have to buy into yourself. Not only do you have to sell yourself on what you want to do, you have to buy into it 100%. You need to be dedicated and disciplined. And people always say, man, it's so hard to be disciplined. You know what? It is hard. Some people can do it on their own, and some people need others. So also, like, find somebody else who's like-minded like you. If you're passionate about something, join a group or a club that's also passionate about it. I've seen so many people in terms of fitness join these CrossFit gyms, and they go work out with like 20 people. And the first time they go there, they're scared shitless. And they go on there and they build relationships. They're posting Instagram stories together. They're challenging each other on social media. They're using social media as a platform for change, that's the positive of social media. That kind of sometimes gets left out. Understand that you can do the things you set your mind out to. You can do the things. I know you guys know. I mean, Christian showed me videos of him squatting. I was like, holy shit. He's squatting more plates than I think I've seen in the gym. At my new 24-hour fitness gym, I was like, he took every plate in the gym and just squatted it. Everybody's waiting behind you. Like, hey dude, can I have 145? I want a bench. But just having that mindset, you go out there and you set a goal. I mean, you guys are great at it. You guys are personal trainers. I know your goals are very much number goals. Hey, I want to hit this number, this lift, this thing, and I think those are great. I think it's harder to
have personal goals with it, like your own, not just numbers, like you're saying. Like,
yeah.
your own personal goals, like whether, like you said, I got to get up early this time or I got to do this. You got to have those different goals, and it shouldn't just be based on stats. And kind of what you're saying with it, it should be more based on like you got to be able to get up and say, hey, yeah, I might go hit this like on bench or something like that, but I also got to have a goal like, hey, I want to make myself better, so I'm going to wake up earlier because I've been missing breakfast, or hey, I got to do this because I haven't been spending time with my family, or hey, I need to practice like my singing or something like that, so I need to dedicate more time to that. So it's like setting those personal goals, and you got to realize this is something that I've always said, that you gotta almost be able to do, our life is so busy, you gotta be able to do everything continuously in a life, and it's so much work, but if you love what you're doing, you can put everything in one and say, hey, like right now I'm literally balancing work, I'm balancing boxing, I'm balancing vocal lessons, I'm balancing this podcast, I'm balancing my family, my friends, like, but if you put that into perspective, people don't understand that that's how much time you're trying to spend doing these things, and that's what's super hard. And it whether it's 10 minutes a day or something like that, you understand that you're trying to do something at the end of the day that is worth your time, but you don't have other things to do, other things that aren't valuable to you and other things that aren't improving you. You're not giving time to those things anymore. You're starting to only give time to the things that actually truly mean something to you. And that's what our 20s is kind of like, honestly. We're trying to figure out our own stuff. We're trying to figure out our own life. So why friendships, I feel it's hard to dedicate so much time to each other, is because we're trying to personally take a next step on our own. We're trying to take that next step. So we have spent so much time focusing on that part and a little time more on like, hey, we've already built a friendship, so we're just going to kind of put that on the back burner sometimes, you know?
Yeah, and I think what the point that I was going to is saying that, hey, look, that you guys have numbers for lists, but it's also not just about quantifying it through numbers. It's about through, hey, the dedication and the work it took to get to that number. Understand that once you get there, that's not the end. Yeah. You need to refocus yourself into something else, and understand that constantly you should have goals every day, goals every week. That way you keep yourself on pace, because what happens is you can lose yourself. And I know a lot of people that I've been friends with or that I've known have kind of lost their way in the same time period. They're talking about this 20-year-old, whatever, 20-year-old, this 20-year-old, 20 to 30-year-old time period. A lot of people have lost their way, and then they kind of get lost, and it snowballs, and they don't know what to do, and they're trying to find control in certain places. I think you have to find a way to find a compass, and you need to constantly come back to that same place of, I want to be better. And for me, my main motivator my entire life is not, Ryan Mahoney thinks it's beating on video games. I want to give him a shout out for that, so hopefully he's listening. And you better text me if you got that one. But my main motivator in my life is just being a great father, being a great man, and being a man that when people look back on it, they say, hey, look, he impacted my life in a positive way. Maybe it was a laugh, maybe it was a smile, maybe I pushed you a little bit to be better, but that's where I'm at, where that is my single myopic focus every single day, is just to better myself as a person and understand that I'm not perfect. And as soon as I start to think that I'm perfect, I realize that there's something huge wrong, because that's not true, and find out ways to improve. It's not necessarily picking at myself every day or looking at little things that I do wrong. Just understand that you can improve the habits that you have. Maybe you get in an argument, or you say something, and changing a negative to a positive, something you can do. Or maybe you didn't focus on someone the right way. Maybe you're neglecting your friends and are saying, hey, how can I better have a relationship with my friends? How can I balance my friend's relationship, my girlfriend's relationship, work, stuff like that? And I think for me, I need to definitely improve my friendship relationship, because I haven't seen you in a while. I've been seeing a lot of my other friends and stuff, but it's also understanding at this point in this age, who are the friends that matter? And I've been really struggling with, I have a lot of friends and a lot of people ask me stuff to do, but who are the friends that I want to be 50 years old with and have our kids grow up together? Who are those friends? And for all of you that can't see the video, Shane just looked at me, and I think he was a little tear drizzled down his face. But you got to understand that at some point, like, I feel like for me, high school is like, you want to be friends with everybody. You want to be super cool. You want to have all these relationships. You want to manage all these friendships. You want to have 1 million friends on social media, 1 million likes. All that stuff's great. But now it's hard for a lot of people to transition to this next stage of life. It's hard to say, oh my gosh, I don't want to have 200 likes on my photo. I don't want to do this or this or this or this, and focus on just like 5 people that really matter to me. But that's really where you got to go. You got to invest in relationships, because you honestly cannot have a strong, I don't want to say sexual relationship. It's not really sexual, but you can, like a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship. You can't have that exist and also be balancing 1 million friendships. You got to have a good balance between that boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, and then people that you surround yourself with that challenge you to be better. And you should always have people around you that are either better than you or they challenge you to be better. Because if not, they're just bringing you down. And it's hard to say that because there's a lot of people that you have ties with over the course of years. But understand that, hey, look, this guy may be a drain on me now, and I need to start pulling back, and it sucks. It really hurts. It hurts that your soul. It really does. But understand that that's what you have to do for your life. You want to be better. And for me, that's where I'm at right now. I'm going through that period, and it's hard. It's really hard. And I'm happy that I have the friends that I have. You guys, Ryan, different people throughout the country, Demetrius, Trim in Norway, all these random people. Yes, his name is Trim, T-R-Y-M. Christian looked at me like I'm speaking a different language. Yes, his name is Norwegian. His last name is Sandbach.
That's amazing. That's the probably perfect last name for a jersey somewhere.
2 Ks.
Literally.
They play street soccer there. His team's not very good. His name is on the jersey, but the team is winless over the course of 2 years since he's come back home. I'll get you a Sandbach. You want an autograph?
We can have an autographed Sandbach jersey, like right here. That'd be awesome.
All right, this is on the audio. I'm gonna play this to you, Trim, tonight or whenever this is done, and you're gonna autograph a jersey and ship it here for like $80. And if they don't, put it up on this wall. We're gonna burn this house down.
But I think really looking at that entire topic, right? And everything both of you just said, I think for me over the last few weeks, and I don't really know what the driving force was behind this and kind of where it came from. I mean, it started in the gym. Now it's starting to really bleed into everything else. You got to like really focus on your weak points, because why continue trying to work on things you're good at when you're just leaving the shitty parts of what you suck at behind, if that makes sense. So like, why aren't you trying to improve, for me in the gym, it's like, why are you not trying to improve your posterior chain strength? And for you guys that don't know what that is, it's your hamstrings and your ass and your back. But
same for me as well. But
yeah, no, I mean, you gotta think about like where are you lacking that can help you improve other areas of your life, right? And I refer to the gym so much because that's become such. I guess my box is a lot of the gym, and I mean my deadlift and my squat are lacking because I lack low back strength. And for a deadlift that has to pull you up. So really, for me, I've had to go focus on what I need to do to the weaknesses, right? But that also leads into, what am I sucking at work? What am I sucking at socially? What am I sucking at with literally anything? Where can I improve, and how am I going to improve it? So,
and I'd look at that stuff, maybe not use the term "where do I suck," because some people are not as mentally strong as you. Some people look at that, and then that saying "where do I suck" actually puts them in a little box, and they curl up and then they cry in their safe square. But
their safe square.
I don't know how
safe box.
I don't know how this. They have a safe box. They have a box and a safe box. Great. And we're doing
box within the box.
We're doing such a good job of being so serious, so focused. We're doing a great job of like being politically correct, and now we're pulling out the safe space. Oh, Brandon's here. I'm gonna get a text message tonight about making fun of the safe space. But I think it's a thing where you got to understand that you need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and understand that you're not perfect and still love yourself. And a lot of people nowadays can't look in the mirror and love themselves. They're like, oh my gosh, I have a millimeter of belly fat, I'm fat. Or it's, I don't look good with makeup on. Or it's maybe a guy like, man, I can't hit a 3-pointer, but everything else is great. It's understand that you have those things and understand, hey, maybe there are controllables. So like maybe you go to the gym a little bit more, maybe do this. Find ways to empower yourself. And that's the biggest point that we're all getting to. Find ways to figure out what makes you happy, what you need to do with your life, and structure it in a way that empowers you to be confident. Because no matter what, it all comes down to confidence. And you guys talked about talking to girls and stuff, and you guys were like saying, oh, you don't know how to talk to girls? I'll tell you right now how to talk to girls. Have some confidence. Yeah. You can say stupid stuff to them, because you know what? I say stupid shit all the time. That's literally like 90% of what comes out of my mouth. And generally, for some reason, people say I'm a decently good at talking to girls. But it's because I'm confident, and I go over there and I treat them like people. And I think as long as you are confident in yourself, and you have an awareness of yourself, you can talk to anyone, you can do anything, you can become anything. Because like, when you go into a job interview, the number one thing the person's looking for is this person confident? Because a lot of times, no one's perfect for a role. We'll use a job interview just as like the kind of example I'm going here. But no one's perfect for the job. And if there's someone perfect, great. But most times, there's going to be someone missing 1 or 2 boxes or check boxes, right? So what differentiates you from other people? You can go into that interview and you can say, hey, look, acknowledge it. Be like, hey, look, I'm missing this and this, but I think these other strengths that I have allow me to excel in this position, and I can work, and like you said, Christian, I can work on those weaknesses, I can learn those things, and I'll invest in them. I guarantee if you go to a job interview and you say that, you're gonna knock the pants off whoever you're talking to, and they're gonna hire you.
Yeah, you have to love your flaws. Exactly what you're saying. Like, you know you have weaknesses, and you can't lie to yourself that you have weaknesses. But the only way to get rid of those weaknesses is you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And same going back with like confidence with girls or confidence in anything. You have to put yourself in those situations to build the confidence. Whether you fail and fail and fail or whatever you want to say, you don't have to say it's a fail. Maybe you just end up making a mistake or whatever. You have to be so confident in it that you have to keep putting yourself in that situation over and over and over. That's sports, that's life, that's girls, whatever you want to say. So I think that's a big thing that you're saying. I think confidence in life and in general, you have to put yourself through so many different aspects that it will eventually build that confidence in your life and the whole spectrum. Then you can just go live your life how you want to live your life because you put yourself through so many different uncomfortable situations. And that's huge. And I think that's a big part of that. And what Kobe was saying, and with his mentality, the Mamba mentality.
Great tie-in, Shane, keep going. I just want to say great tie-in.
And like the Mamba mentality is, he lived that. He put himself through a lot of uncomfortable situations. He lost, he failed, but he kept going forward. He kept going and pushing forward and keep taking the next step, and that was huge. So I think that's the biggest part, even so far, how much we've read about it in about the fourth of the book. It showed a lot of that, and it showed a lot of that into his life, and it showed a lot when he passed away and his daughter passed away and all those families that passed away. It really struck us, and we felt it because he was able to be vulnerable, and he was able to put himself on a higher standard that we look at and we say, we thought he was indestructible. And when something like that happens, when a high celebrity like that looks so indestructible, you realize that everyone's going to die at some point. That everyone, like, you never know when something's going to happen. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this is just live your life to the fullest and take those chances. Live with no fear. Take everything that you want to get from life and value those priority in that life and everything. And that's huge. And I think that's what we're going to be talking about next week. We'll get another guest on here. And I think that's the biggest things we're going to be focusing on.
I'm coming back next week.
We'll have Brandon come back at some point, but that's something that we're looking for. This next part of the book, we want to see like the more aspects that he puts in there, and that self-improvement and that mentality that he had, that he just wanted to be the greatest. He wanted to be the best version of himself, and I think we all want to try to achieve that, and that's huge. So tune with us next week. We'll still be talking about the Mamba mentality. Brandon, it was awesome having you on the show. You got any last minute remarks?
I have about 45 minutes more of content, so fasten your seatbelts, everybody.
we might have you come on like at the end of the month for another, because I know you know a lot about this book and a lot about Kobe and everything. We'd like to hear more and everything, but that is awesome. We'll see you guys next week. Tune in with us. Christian, you got anything?
Have fun this week. Go lift some weights.
Go lift some weights. Go be your greatest.
Get big. Focus on your weak points. Get stronger.
Yep.
Can we start just a little comments on the Instagram? Just comment kind of what your goals are. You don't have to be super like detailed, but just be like, hey, if you're somebody and say, hey, I want to get to the gym more, put that in there. Yeah. And then everybody else, I challenge you, look at that comment feed after you hear this. See if anybody's commented a goal. If you have a similar goal, cheer them on, like their post. Let's get a little community kind of buy-in here. This podcast, I think, when Shane and Christian explained to me, was about getting a bunch of people together, sharing our experiences, messing around, making some jokes. Hopefully you guys laugh at them. I pray you do, or else I just look like a fool. But if not, that's fine too. But just build a community here. Start commenting, start interacting. Use this page as like a little getaway, you know? You can talk about what we talk about. You can comment. You can like us, you can DM us.
Be vulnerable.
Yeah, you can be vulnerable. I mean, don't get too vulnerable on the page yet. Wait till they get a few more followers before you get super vulnerable, because you may not get any interaction, which would be a little sad. But thank you so much for listening. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon. All right, guys, have a good weekend. We'll see you next week. Tune in with us. Start reading the book with us, all right? We want you to follow along and be a part of this. Have a good one.